All right, welcome to another edition of 10 Minutes with. Kate is back. She's been all over the place. Apparently, she was driving around in tornadoes the other day.
Oops, it was a mistake. I didn't realize.
You didn't realize, you've lived in the Midwest your entire life. You didn't realize that the really dark sky and the heavy rains during the middle
And the hail?
and
It
the
was
hail.
Sirens.
Yeah. The alerts on your phone. I mean, it comes into your phone and saying, hey, idiot, don't drive.
I was already driving when my phone decided to tell me there was a tornado.
You mean you're not checking your phone while
By
you're driving?
tornado, I think they said there were 11.
11.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wait, did you move to Nebraska? Like
No?
Kansas.
Kansas? Yeah, Tornado Alley?
Maybe I was trying to go to Oz.
Yeah, maybe.
Hey.
Anyway, after derailing the show already, you can see we're joined by our two guests here. Please welcome the co-host of the Bryant and Me podcast, which ironically I forgot the name of the other day. Brian James.
We got to pick an Eastern
Costello.
name.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you so much for having us. Thank you so much.
So we're going to jump right into it. You were telling us before that you have a story of how you met. Let's hear it.
So, hi, everybody. My name is Thomas Costello. Nice to meet you. I am a trainer at my place of occupation, and I was training Bryant's wife. This was 2017, I think. And just in the regular course of training people, my personality shines through. And I'll add my own, my life shines through, I should say. Not, that was really humble sounding, but I eventually came out that I really love soccer. I think this is when we live in Columbus, Ohio, and this is when the Save the Crew, if you're an MLS fan, you heard the Columbus Crew was trying to be stolen by some investor operator, and I have a cup that's
owner until it legally matters, and
right.
Investor operator. Yeah,
owner until it's inconvenient, and then they're investor operator.
That's right. We're very good friends with Ralph Schudel, so we got the whole story. Actually, I have a Save Crew shirt in my drawer somewhere.
Oh, nice. Well, I talked because somebody asked about it, and I talk about it, and I talk about soccer, and then I talk about all the other sports because I enjoy pretty much all the sports. And Alyssa said, that's Brian's wife, that you would really like my husband. And this is the Indians and Cubs had just played in the World Series a handful of months before, and it was still raw for me. I'm from Northeast Ohio. My family's from Cleveland. And Brian, his family's from Chicago. And when Alyssa told me this in training class, I said, I'm probably not going to like him. He sounds pretty awful because he was a Cubs fan. And I still have issues over that even to this day. But then we eventually met, and because Brian then moved into the same department that I trained his wife in, what was it, maybe 7 or 8 months later. And then Oh, he had to. That's why you were standing up abruptly and distracting me.
I had to grab my prop.
A prop.
Right.
Thank you. We'll keep it as prop.
I'm like the carrot top of podcasting.
Oh gosh, I don't want to know. So when Brian eventually came to the department, Alyssa was right. We ended up hitting it off, even with some poor taste in sporting teams. We most of the time it meshes pretty well.
Yeah, I can remember like Alyssa. I feel like it was like the first week of class was like you're really gonna like this guy. You guys seem to have a lot in common already, similar personalities, similar people. So I think it was she kind of started the whole thing in gear. So she's really the origin of our podcast.
Yeah. And then it's sad. Like, oh, go ahead, Brian. After you, sir.
I was just gonna say, we would have these conversations, and I wasn't getting much work done because I would come hang out by his desk and talk. And we're like, I think one time we said, you know what, we should just record these.
Yeah.
Minus the I guess it did turn into a podcast eventually, but that's basically Kate and my story. We used to work in the same office together, and it wasn't very productive. In fact, they moved her to the other side of the building.
It wasn't because of you and your props, I'm sure. I had helped, years and years ago, I worked in the radio industry. So I had a little bit of audio editing. I messed around in production. I did a little bit of that. And it had been like 10 plus years. I helped out some friends in a running podcast because they were doing running stuff on YouTube. They would have a back and forth podcast, but it was only on YouTube and it was only live. And so I helped them, get a podcast going. I edited audio and I gave them audio. I gave them all this stuff. Well, I started a Liverpool podcast with one of the guys because he was a soccer fan. The other guy hates soccer, so we didn't include hhid him. So the other guy, we started a podcast. And then funny enough, Bryant and me were just talking about it today. Bryant was like, yeah, this is going to be my second time on a podcast that's not our own. And I was like, oh, you were on another podcast before. What podcast were you on? And it was the one that I had. I've had so many podcasts over the last few years that I forgot that I even had Bryant on the show. But we, it just turned into, we like hanging out with each other. We like talking to one another, even though like you might have a rough day at work. And we say this all the time. Most of the weeks we're like, okay, I do not want to record tonight. And then we get going and then it's just like, it brings you back. Like it fills you back up and you're talking to a friend, and we'll talk like we do on the pod outside of the podcast. We both are on the Twitter account. We tweet the same things often because we're in each other's minds, and it's kind of eerie.
So what would someone expect listening to your podcast?
So the tagline that we always start our podcast with is Thomas will say that we're a soccer podcast that talks about other things, other podcasty things. So we're a soccer podcast. We mostly talk about soccer. Usually it's around kind of MLS, specifically, Columbus Crew. We'll talk some like English Premier League, kind of more specifically the teams that we both cheer for. So Thomas is a big Liverpool supporter. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur supporter. So we'll talk about them, but we'll talk about, the Premier League at large. Within the last few months, we really have started getting heavily into the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League. So we both decided to be Chicago Red Stars supporters this season. So we talked about them quite a bit through the, the NWSL Challenge Cup. We had a couple players on, which was really cool. But what you'll find with our podcast too is we'll be talking about soccer, and then all of a sudden, just because we kind of speak in pop culture references, there will be some kind of random pop culture reference, and then we'll go off for 10 minutes on some kind of bunny trail about whatever pop culture reference one of us made.
Wrestling references, and I only can reference things up until about 1999. So it's dated wrestling references.
I remember when The Rock first got there, and that's about where I cut it.
Or
pretty much.
Or one of us will say something that's like a song lyric, and then we'll both just randomly start singing whatever song. For instance, we busted into "Take on Me" by Aha last week on the pod. Just we both tried to hit the crazy high note, but I don't think anybody can really hit that note.
It's not quite.
Well, we had a new logo, and the person at Graphics by Jess, she made our logo. I think she's actually based in England. She made our logo, and it's like a drawing of it. And the joke was that we look much better in an animated drawing portion than our actual faces, because I made our initial logo using PowerPoint. And then we actually paid a graphic designer to make something. And then I made the joke that it was like an 80s music video. And then Brian was like, "Take on Me." And then we started singing, which we won't do right now. We tried to get Keelia Watt to sing on the show, but she would not. We tried.
See, we actually, Kate has banned me from singing because I've done it too many times. It's pretty poor.
It's bad.
Oh, no, Kate, you haven't listened to our show then. That's okay. You'll make a DJ, you'll be like, "Oh, I feel so much better about him if you listen to us."
But we do have one fan that's really into our singing, like always encourages every week for us to sing more.
Yeah.
And when he wrote a review for us on Apple Podcast, and mentioned what great singers we are. So
shout out to Homer.
Since I can't sing, I actually try to go to the musical background. If somebody else sings, I'll do the music behind them, singing music, acting like I'm playing a keyboard, even though I have no idea how to play a keyboard. I mean, that's about the extent I can do anymore.
There you go.
So is it just me, or does DJ look really like creepy right now? Like his face.
Thanks, Kate. Wow. You know what? I think I'm going to go back to doing these solo.
Oh no!
Oh man. Last grand opening, grand closing, guys. All right. This is
Oh, is that better? Is that? It's like the Seinfeld thing where you got the lady with the light, and it's like, oh, that's
she's
better, and you're like, ooh,
she's a two-face.
she's a two-face. Yes.
Bad lighting on the porch.
Bryant can speak, and if you mention just like
I'm
one small
effective.
piece of a Seinfeld episode, Bryant will recite the entire episode for you.
It was the Festivus episode. Huh?
I was gonna say my family watches that as a family every year. 'Cause my family actually celebrates Festivus.
Mine does too. We actually have an aluminum pole we would put out. I mean,
We do as well.
years, but yeah, it was like one of those aluminum, those paint extender rods that was like 8 feet tall, and we just put it in a little tripod, and we had our Festivus pole.
Wow, I found a kindred spirit right here.
It's just like it makes so much more sense now. I know that
Oh.
look. I didn't even start a clock. Did you, Kate?
Nope.
We never finish our show on time. If our whole thing is if we can finish in under 2 hours, we're probably in good shape. So
Actually, I think our last episode 2 weeks ago, we just moved it into this one. We're still recording.
With this whole hybrid episode thing going, so I guess
This is the crossover, like Urkel and Full House. This is like Urkel going to Full House, or was it Steph? Oh, no, it was Michelle who went to Family Matters, right? Brian, help me out.
yes, I believe that's correct. Yeah, Urkel definitely showed up on an episode of Full House.
I can't really.
The glasses episode where Stephanie got glasses.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
Yes,
Nailed it.
that's right. And he's like, they look cool. I need more props.
There was
No, you-
also a step. My favorite is when Step by Step, the sister from Step by Step, was on Boy Meets World when Corey chased Topanga down to Disney World. I'm a big Boy Meets World fan because that's just I'm a 30-something white guy. That's what I grew up on was Boy Meets World. So yeah.
It's like I think I learned more from Mr. Feeney than I did any of my
Oh,
K
absolutely.
through 12 teachers. No offense, K through 12 teachers, if you ever saw this. So anyway, a piece of advice that you've learned since you started podcasting.
This is a good question. We at the beginning of our show, we just tried everything. If we had a good idea for a segment or for something on social media, we're like, let's just try it. Let's see what happens. And we would just mess around and play around with it. I would say that the show got really more enjoyable for us after, we went through those trials of trying things out, guessing things. Okay, does this work? Does that work? Getting feedback from friends, not our wives because they won't listen to it, but just people that would listen to it. And then eventually it got to the point where once we stopped looking at, okay, how many people are listening? How many people jump from this week to the next? So we still look at it, and I'll still look at it and say, oh yeah, that episode did well, but we don't invest ourselves too heavily in how many people have listened to it. Brian and I tell each other that even if nobody was listening, we'd probably still want to hang out each week and start recording. And once I moved it away from, or once like we discussed it and we moved it away from, okay, grow the audience. Let's see how we can let's get sponsorship. Let's do that. Once we ignored that, I think we're actually now at the point where we've gone completely opposite, where it's like, okay, we're just going to keep it DIY. We're not going to try to get sponsors. We're not going to do anything. Let's
True
just
indie podcasting.
just try to enjoy it and try not to make it something that turns into something I have to do, and keeping it just more enjoyable and having that time to really decompress, because that's what it ultimately is for us. Like we record average about hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. Actually, we've been getting much better. We've gotten even closer to like an hour and 10 minutes, but we don't take breaks either. We do a quick 5-minute intro, like a pre-intro is what we call it. Then we start recording, and we don't stop. We don't edit it. We don't okay, let's take a break. We just talk for an hour plus, and then we're like, oh well, this works. Okay, let's share this. And at the end of every episode, oh, that had to have been 2.5 hours. But then it's not, because we just get lost in the conversation, even though it doesn't really take as long as we think. I think once we stop enjoying it, we probably won't do it anymore.
I hear that. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I think Kate noticed, but the door behind me keeps opening, and that is precisely why I blocked the door when I'm doing this. The door's opening. My wife's like, no, don't do that. Don't.
It's like a little child's hand peeks through the edge of it. And
Like,
yeah.
So, Kate, you want to take the final question?
Where can we find you?
We are, so you can find the pod on, let's see, we are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we're on, Thomas, help me out here.
A lot Overcast. We're on a lot of other ones. Whatever Anchor automatically puts us on.
So,
And one that Bryant said last week in our closing, which I did not have any idea that it even existed. What was that podcast platform?
Spreaker.
Spreaker. I thought he was completely making it up. We are not on Spreaker. But
That is a real thing because I heard it on another one of the podcasts that I listened to. We're on social media as well. You can get us on Instagram. We're at Bryant and Me. You can get us on Twitter. We spend a lot more time on Twitter interacting, and we talk about our podcast, but we talk about just whatever pops into our head. It might be political. It might be sports. It might be beer. It might be stupid pop culture nonsense, like whatever.
reading through 7 hours of a Columbus Blue Jackets game.
Oh my God.
That was a long one.
That was it took a while. Disappointing end to that one, but hey.
Yeah. At least it didn't start at like 9 p.m. Eastern time. That would have been really brutal.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I'm going to actually get this right this time, Thomas. You ready? If you want to listen to me, Bryant, I'm at Pickle Chips. Replace the I's with ones. Boom, got it. And then you can follow Thomas at Thomas Costello. One of the running jokes on our podcast is whether I'm actually going to get my explanation of my Twitter handle right.
Twitter handle. It's his own Twitter handle. He doesn't know.
It was a running thing for a long time that I would mess it up somehow.
You had 7 in a row where you got it. And
right.
Every time we celebrated it.
Then we started counting how many times in a row I actually got it right at the end. One of these days we're just going to like pre-record our outro. But hadn't happened yet.
We're going to keep it organic. Actually,
no
you messed it up.
Here. Go live.
You messed it up last episode. Well, yeah, do it live every time.
We'll do it live.
He messed it up last episode, but then I messed up the intro last episode. That's the first time I ever messed it up. So if you want the best episode we've ever had, actually, we screwed it up. Our last episode we had, he's a Columbus advocate. His name is Ty Phillips. Him and his wife do a lot of things for helping the marginalized in Columbus. So we have we're a soccer podcast, but like Brian said, we have so many other kind of pools that we dip our toes in every once in a while. It's mostly soccer, but we do have some fun in other arenas.
Awesome. All right. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I have no idea what the time is on this. We didn't keep a clock today. We were kind of warned that we were going to go over, and you know what? Again,
Yeah, we did.
The repeating joke. This show is like the Big Ten, where counting hasn't mattered in years. Yeah. I love that joke. It's so bad, but it's so good.
Oh, yeah.
So real quick before we wrap this up, Bryant, on your Instagram account, there was a video campaign commercial you made for yourself to become the your local Spurs club social media manager, which I thought was hysterical. Did you get the job?
I did not, but I did
Oh.
not, but I will say the person that's doing it is 1,000 times more qualified to do it than I am. So I feel like the club really made the right decision there. But the campaign thing was completely Thomas. Like, he didn't tell me he was going to do it. That was a complete and total surprise, and it was hilarious. I died.
In the prep, I was digging through, and I'm like, "Wait, what's this?" And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is hilarious." That's very well done.
Wait, you prepped for these?
I always do this, you know.
Professional. Look at Mr. Overachiever over here.
We need to learn a thing or two about
The
this.
time I'm logging on and I don't even know who we're talking to.
That's okay, Kate. We don't know who we are either. We're still figuring that out.
Notice our podcast advice had nothing to do with preparation.
One of the I'm a big fan of Gilbert Gottfried's podcast, and his co-host Frank Santopadre, he's our comedy writer. He worked for Mad Magazine for years. He's written for many shows. He's like the the gold standard of prep. Like his goal is if the guest doesn't say, how did you know that? He didn't do his job. That's kind of his attitude. Gilbert just kind of walks in. He probably doesn't even know who the guest is when he walks into the studio. And there's still a good chance that after he leaves the show, he still doesn't know who the guest was.
Probably not. No.
So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, but it's very, we have our Gilbert right down
I was
there.
gonna say, Kate, would that make you Gilbert Gottfried in this? You don't really sound much like him.
No.
Thank God. Sorry, Gilbert.
You
I
know,
was a
I
big
love
fan of the show.
Gilbert Gottfried. He's hilarious. I don't know if I could listen to that voice for.
He doesn't do the exaggerated voice that much, but if you get like
Okay.
if you get like Artie Lang or someone who's been friends with him, he's actually a very shy personality. So if you get someone who he doesn't know and isn't comfortable with, he's very reserved. But you get like Artie Lang on there, who he's been friends with for years, and it's well, can you imagine just the two of them together for an hour and a half?
Yeah, that'd be rough.
It almost sounds exhausting.
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's just, there was one that they did back in, I think, January or February this year after Artie got out of either jail or rehab or whatever. And so good.
Same diff.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, we're going to wrap this up now that we've like blown way past our time here. So again, Bryant, Thomas, thank you again for being on the show.
Absolutely.
The show is Bryant and Me podcast. We'll have the info on where to subscribe and follow them on social media in the info of this podcast and this video. So check us out at stadiumscene.tv. Join the network. Give us a follow at Stadium Scene on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, and Stadium_Scene on Instagram. And soon TikTok's going to be banned, so I don't have to talk about it. Woo!
Cheers to that.
Also a running joke here. So take care, and we will see you next time.